Hello, and welcome to Echoes of Deception, a series about storytelling that begins in 1487 and never ends. Have you ever stood out in the night sky and looked up and wondered? This episode is about a curiosity, a universal one, something we've all felt or sensed when we looked up into the night sky and the wonder of all the stars and star clusters. Is there something out there? And if there is, does it know we're here? It's a question that can fill you with wonder or drop the floor from under you, sometimes in the same breath, because it lives on that line between wonder and dread, and it's always been irresistible to storytellers. And because it's irresistible to storytellers, it's always been dangerous. A voice that can make you feel small can make you believe almost anything. Tonight, I want to put two broadcasts side by side. They're separated by 88 years, and they could not have reached us more differently. One arrived as a voice in the dark. The other arrived as light on a giant screen. But they ask the same question, and they end up having the same argument about that question. The argument is this: if the right voice announced the truth, would we all finally believe the same thing at the same time? Curious, isn't it? The first broadcast is from the night before Halloween. In 1938, a young man named Orson Welles picked up a microphone and for 1 hour convinced some portion of America that Martians had landed in New Jersey. The second story is from this past June. Steven Spielberg released another film called Disclosure Day, an epic about the moment the government finally tells the world the aliens are real. It opened in theaters on June 12, 2026. That coincidence got me because on that same day, June 12, 2026, the United States government released its third and final batch of declassified UFO files. Not a movie, real footage. Real documents. The dream Spielberg put on screen was happening down the street at the same hour. The medium had sure changed: radio, then cinema, then government website. The fantasy, however, stayed the same. One broadcast delivered by the right voice could rewrite all of what humanity believes in a single night. Let's start with the night it supposedly worked. Imagine it's Sunday evening, October 30th, 1938. Most of America is doing what most of America did on a Sunday evening in 1938. They're sitting in the dark of their living rooms with the radio on. You have to understand what radio was then. It wasn't background noise. It was the one voice that came into every home in the country at the same moment, and it was the voice you had learned to trust for the truth. When something terrible happened in the world, radio is how you found out. A bulletin interrupting your program didn't mean entertainment. It meant pay attention. what was said, the message was real. Orson Welles knew that. He was 23 years old, running a program called the Mercury Theater on the air. And that night he was adapting an old H.G. Wells novel about a Martian invasion of Earth. But Wells didn't read it like a story. He built it like a news broadcast, an interruption, a bulletin. Explosions reported in Grover's Mill, New Jersey, he said. Think of Grover's Corner in Thornton Wilder's famous 1938 play, Our Town. A reporter's voice is cracking as something crawls out of a metal cylinder. Then the bulletins become faster, on top of each other, the way they do when something is going wrong. He took the form of truth and poured a fiction into it, and it echoed everywhere radio signals carried the sound. Here's the story we have been told about what happened next. Panic, mass hysteria, Americans pouring into the streets, families fleeing New Jersey with wet towels over their faces against Martian gas. Switchboards were jammed, people were weeping, praying, loading guns. A nation, for 1 hour, believed the end had come, all because of a single voice on the radio. Now, it's a wonderful story. It has been repeated for almost 90 years. It's in the textbooks. It's an example everyone reaches for when they want to warn you about the power of media to fool the masses. There's just one problem. It mostly didn't happen. Here is what the careful historians found. On that Sunday night, the audience for Wells' program was small. Most of America wasn't listening to him at all. They were tuned to the most popular show of the hour on another network. The number of people who heard the broadcast, believed it was real, and did something about it was very tiny. There was no wave of highway deaths. There were no verified suicides. The great flood of terrified Americans running from Martians was described far more than it was witnessed. So, where did the panic come from? It came from the newspapers. This is the part that belongs in this series, Echoes of Deception, because it's Kramer's Malleus wearing a modern suit. In 1938, the newspaper industry was frightened of radio. Radio was stealing its readers, and worse, stealing its advertisers. Radio was the new medium, and the old one wanted it discredited. So when a young showman handed the newspapers a story that made radio look reckless, irresponsible, a danger to the public, they did not fact-check it. They amplified it. And overnight, the panic became a national scandal. A lesson, a warning. The headlines were far larger than the event. Look at what happened here. A fictional broadcast frightened a modest number of people. Then a second fiction, the fiction of nationwide panic, was manufactured by a rival medium that had every reason to want it believed. And it was believed. It is still believed. You believed it too when you sat down and listened to this podcast. Most of us did, until someone laid the record next to the legend. That's the deeper deception. And it isn't the Martians. The Martians were really honest fiction. Wells told you at the top of the hour it was a play, and told you again at the end. The lie that lasted, the lie that hardened into fact and got written into the textbook, was the story about the story. The panic that mostly wasn't. A lie believed long enough becomes a law. A false headline repeated long enough becomes history. So hang on to that. When Steven Spielberg picks up this same question in 2026, he gives us the opposite fantasy. Where 1938 imagined a broadcast that made us believe a lie too easily, Spielberg imagines a broadcast that makes us believe the truth all at once, and it saves the world. Two dreams, the same longing, one voice, everyone at once, and between them, 88 years in which we learn something neither dream wants to admit. Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day makes a 2-hour argument that the truth, broadcast plainly enough, would both set us free and hold us together. But he's wrong. In the most revealing way a great filmmaker can be wrong. And that way is the whole reason for this podcast. I want to give the film its due first because it earns a great deal. Disclosure Day is the work of a master craftsman in full command of his artistic ability. The camera never sits still. It circles its people. It breaks the rules of screen direction on purpose and keeps you off balance for the nearly 2 hours. The film is built on a genuinely human idea. It's a thematic descendant of that film I'm sure we all remember, The Close Encounters of the Third Kind. E.T., come home. Who can forget that line? And like that film, Disclosure Day believes the deepest thing science fiction can offer is not the monster, but the connection. The review at RogerEbert.com read Disclosure Day as a movie about the need for real contact between real people. More importantly, perhaps, it's a story about what a single truthful image might do for all of us at once. I agree. It's a beautiful thing for a blockbuster to be reaching for, and I don't want to take that away from either the film or Steven Spielberg. Here's the story in a nutshell. A cybersecurity whistleblower and a group of corporate defectors gather every scrap of proof the government has hidden about alien contact, footage, interrogations, the whole record. They wait for a signal to release all of it at once in an event they call Disclosure Day. The film builds with everything Spielberg has to offer toward its climax, a news broadcast, a big reveal. The marketing ads for the film say it plainly. The truth belongs to 8 billion people on the planet. And in Spielberg's world, what is offered is this: the most dangerous kind of wrong is the kind a genius commits with his whole heart. That's the turn for me. It's where I parted company with the film. You see, Disclosure Day rests on the most ingenious of all conspiracy beliefs, the faith that if you could just put the facts out there, if the news would only report the truth as truth, the whole world would believe it all at once, and the lie would collapse. The novelist and critic Adam Roberts, writing on his Substack just a few days after he saw the film, named this exactly. He said, "Spielberg, the director, is a genius. Spielberg, the storyteller, is a true believer. He thinks disclosure equals belief. He thinks the broadcast still works the way the mythological stories portrayed in the 1938 Orson Welles classic broadcast on radio." And here's something else, the detail I can't get past. You see, my wife and I saw the film in a nearby empty theater. There were two other people several rows behind us. Now, a movie that dreams of 8 billion souls turning toward one screen at one moment was being watched at that moment by almost no one. The image the film cannot see is that theater that my wife and I were attending, and others like it everywhere else it played. On the very same day Disclosure Day opened, the government of the United States released its files, its real footage, the actual disclosure, and 8 billion people did not fall silent and believe. They argued, they shrugged, they called it a nothing burger of blurry smears and weather balloons. The believers said it wasn't enough and demanded live aliens on the table. The medium delivered the truth, or something the government called the truth, and the audience did the one thing Spielberg's fantasy never allows for. It scattered. Wells proved a single voice could move a nation, or so the legend says. And 88 years later, Spielberg dreams of a single broadcast that could potentially unite the planet. Between the two of them sits the thing both stories need and neither one has. A moment when everyone is listening to the same voice. That's the comparison. Now let's build on it. Hey, this is an interruption in this episode 16. I'm going to do something here that I normally, I don't think I have done this in the course of any of the episodes and stories that I've produced this year. I'm going to take a break. And this, right in the middle of this episode, we're about halfway through. It's about probably 16 or 17 minutes long at this point. I'm going to break and I'm going to publish the second part of this story sometime in September. And there's a couple of reasons for doing that. I think retreats are healthy. It's summer. The weather right now is getting in that hot zone when I just want to lay back and kind of reflect, figure out where I am, what I'm doing, and what I'm going to do next. And speaking of that, part of the reason for the retreat is that I'm in the process of doing a polished edit on 2 books that will be out this fall. The first book, if you've been following me at all, you know, is about leadership. And I think it's a fairly unique book and a unique slant. It's not a memory, it's not a manual, and it's something only someone with about 8 decades of experience could write in the way that I've written it, based on lived experience and based on a notion of leadership that I've studied now for over 5 decades. Now, the second book is something else. It's called Disturbances, and it's a kind of an anthology, almost a diary-like book that I started about 1.5 years ago in the form of essays. And I've been writing essays regularly on my Substack. I hope Some of you may want to go out and explore them, but I've reorganized them in a chronology and in seasons with historical context, and I'm offering them up as a diary of just one person in America at this time, which I find to be a highly disturbing time for most all of us. So the way I keep myself on track, the way I try to understand things that I have no control over, is through my writing. And I hope you'll enjoy some of the thoughts that I explore. Again, they'll be out this fall. There'll be more information on them. So bye for now, and I'm going to take this small retreat, and I'll see you at the end of this episode on UFOs and all kinds of things that beg the question, are we alone? I don't really think so. And as always, have a great day and make a little hope. Everyone can use that.